Thank you, Shasta. Beautiful. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. David Alt, Senior Minister, Dean of Education here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. And this year, 2018, we have incorporated a new model which encompasses spiritual wisdom teachers from a multitude of ideas, faiths, all synonymous with science of mind teaching. One of my favorites, and I'll say that because she's here, and then I'll say it about all the other ones when they're here, but one of my favorites on this beautiful spiritual council is the brilliant light that you will experience this morning. Joshi is a brilliant speaker. She's a motivator. She works in a multitude of arenas of enlightenment, but she also works extensively with the amazing world leader Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, and she has been traveling a lot over the course of a couple of months working with him, and we're so privileged that she's returned back to home base Atlanta to be with you this morning. Please welcome Mona Joshi.
Good morning. Good morning. It's an honor to be with you here again today. So this month we continue our discussion of Judith Anadea's book, Awakening the Global Heart. How many, out of curiosity, have read this book? Wonderful. Well, you know, I love what she stands for. She wants to create a better world order. She wants to uplift people, bring greater balance, people living from the heart with spiritual values. So she really stands for what we are teaching here at the Spiritual Living Center. Do you sense a butt coming up? However, again? Usually we do a test run with the earring in which I shake my head. This morning we did not. How many of us have traveled to different countries? Now we know that when we travel abroad, it helps if we remove the lens with which we're watching the world, that we perceive the world, and go with a really open mind. Isn't it? If we can just step out of our own shoes and step into the different shoes of the various people and cultures from those cultures that we meet, then we can embrace that culture from their perspective, not our own. So in Awakening the Global Heart, the first thing we learn in anthropology or in ethnography when I took a course in college is to remove our own lens, or rather to become aware of it, so that we can approach each culture afresh. And I didn't quite feel like she did that in this book, because she would make a lot of statements from a Western perspective of how the world worked. She spoke about hierarchies and brother against brother, and even though I came to the United States when I was 4 years old, I am bicultural. And so there was another perspective that kept coming in on me. So when she's talking about the quest and people working against each other and fighting to get the upper hand, I remembered the story of the Ramayana, or the Ramayan. Anyone familiar with this? I know some of you traveled to Bali with David and got to see the play enacted as well. It's very much alive there, though this story took place over 10,000 years ago. So in this story, a good king is married to a beautiful wife, as good kings often are, and he longed for a child. But the first wife was not able to give him one, so he married again. And she was not able to provide a child, so he married a third time. And you would think he'd figure out at this point that the common factor so they called a sage. Now sages play many roles, including apparently infertility specialist. And he did a special ceremony, invoked ancient mantras, and gave the wives something to drink, which would enable them to have children. So the wives shared this drink, and each one in turn. The first one had a child called Ram. The second one had two children, because both of the first and the third wife shared half of their drink with her. So she had two kids. And then the third one had a child as well. Now these four brothers grew up with such tremendous love for each other. And they looked to Ram as their leader, and each one played a different role. And it was as if there were four bodies but one soul moving together. And the mothers loved all the children. Now, this is what I was thinking of when I was reading her book. Like, wait a minute. It doesn't always have to be like what she's describing. This is the experience that I've grown up with. I mean, I only have one mother, by the way. So, there came a time in which the eldest son needed to start his quest. Now, what was his quest? It was to defeat evil so that wisdom could rise again in the world. And that's a motif that occurs again and again. When darkness comes, goodness rises. It's an opportunity for goodness to rise again and come to the forefront. No parallels with any current political situation. So, he was quite comfortable in the palace. He had a beautiful wife of his own. What would motivate him to start this journey? And that journey would begin by going into the forest for 12 years, where his wife would then get abducted by this so-called evil demon and be taken away, and he would have to retrieve her, and it's all very symbolic, which we can get into later. So, who should be the one, or what would propel this young man to leave the palace and the life that he's leading and the work that he's doing? His mother was not chosen because of her attachment. The third mother was chosen to make this happen. Now, what she did was she was granted two wishes by her husband that she could call upon at any point. And what she did was she said, I would like the eldest son, Ram, to be banished for 12 years, and in his place my son will rule. Now the father was very attached to Ram, and that broke his heart. And this woman, Kaikai, she has been, no one names their kids Kaikai now. She has been the source of, she's just been portrayed as this horrible woman, this evil figure. How could she do this? But what people don't realize is that there's a backstory there too. The backstory to her, which even most people in India may not realize, but you'll know, is that she was asked by the goddess Saraswati. Now this is where mythology and everything gets mixed up, as happens whenever you look at history. So she was asked by the goddess Saraswati, who took the form of her maid, that for Ram's growth, he needed to leave the palace. He needed to go to the forest to set in motion these series of events so that he could realize his heroic powers. She said, but why me? Why not ask his birth mother to do this? We can't ask his birth mother because her attachment to him is too strong. Why not someone else? No, we've chosen you because your intellect is so sharp, and because your love for him is the most fierce, it's the strongest. And your love for him is so unconditional that it will override the pain and the discomfort of what you have to do. She said, but I will be blamed for eons. They said, but this is in his best interest. Are you willing to make that sacrifice? And so she did. Now, what does this illustrate? It illustrates many things. One is we tend to take one perspective based on our point of view, and this is right and that is wrong, isn't it? Because who knows best? Obviously, we do at that moment. And secondly, I thought it was interesting that the way it was portrayed, that the goddess Saraswati had entered into the form of her maid servant, was interesting because it's also an indication that, we're just players. We're the chess pieces, and there's some divine director moving us around. When it's our time to shine, we'll shine. When it's our time to support, we'll support. When it's our time to go through some challenge, we'll experience that challenge. But the blessings and the challenges that we have in our life are all on equal footing. The blessings make life enjoyable, but the challenges bring out growth. And it's divinely orchestrated. And then the other side of it, of course, is that the journey that we need to take is not just an outward journey, though it expresses itself in such a way, but it's an inward journey to the self. And we'll come back to that point. Now in this book, what she does, and I'm so happy you've all read it, I felt that she was setting up a lot of binaries, a lot of dichotomies that were hierarchical, that were conflicting, that were dichotomous. For example, the love of power versus the power of love, the static masculine, the static feminine, the dynamic masculine, the dynamic feminine, chakras, or chakras as we call them in India. She even puts the lower chakras, what she calls the lower chakras, up against the higher chakras and says, this is the values that we need now, the ones of the lower chakras. How can you just create conflict even there? And that to me spoke to her own upbringing and perspective, which was absolutely fine that she invoked that. But with this other background that many of us bring, many of us carry a double vision due to differences in sexual orientation, economic background, gender, culture, race, that give us not just the vision of the dominant narrative that's functioning in society, but fissures in that narrative that enable us to see where that narrative isn't working and where other stories can also unfold. So as I was reading that, that was coming to my mind. So she spent a lot of time talking about the dynamic feminine. And in India, the male and female energies in the divine are said to converge, just like it does in all of us. So each of us carries both male genes and female genes, because half of them are given by our mother, half of them are given by our father. Yes? And that representation is even there in Vedic iconography, in the image of Ardhinarishwar, which is the divine depicted as half male and half female. It's incredible to see in a dance, because when people are performing this dance, they're at once like this, the male warrior, and immediately with the next turn, they're like this. It's extraordinary to see visually in one form. Now this female energy, let's spend a moment there. Shakti in India is known as strength, and it's Shakti, this goddess energy, that pervades the entire universe. And the common word for strength is also Shakti, whether it's inner strength or outer strength. Now Shakti is often depicted in 3 different forms. So though Hinduism is a monotheistic religion, it has various symbols of gods and goddesses to represent the totality of the human experience, or divinity itself. So one form of Shakti is the goddess Durga. And how she is Mother Divine, compassion and love incarnate. And yet, she's fierce. She rides a tiger. On the one hand, she's so soft. On the other hand, she's the one who fights in this world for justice, the destroyer of evil. Courage with compassion. Then another representation of that energy of Shakti is the goddess Lakshmi. Now Lakshmi is depicted with a lotus flower, in her hand, and standing on a lotus. She represents wealth and wellness, both of which are a little ephemeral, right? Or a little unstable. One day you're feeling great, the next day it's, oh my God, my back, my shoulders. Yes? And wealth, we know how unstable that is. So she's depicted standing on a lotus flower on water, which is also unstable. It's not solid like a tiger, or solid like a rock. The third representation of Shakti energy is the goddess Saraswati, which represents knowledge and wisdom. And she's depicted sitting on a rock, which symbolizes that once you have knowledge, it can never leave you. That's why we put so much emphasis on education, right? For our kids. And she represents knowledge in all forms. So she's depicted playing a veena, which is a sitar-like instrument. So the arts, I mean, today, if they were to redo her, she'd probably be like, typing at a keyboard. She has rosary beads in one hand. She has many hands, because women, let's be honest. Which represents meditation. Now this energy, Shakti, is said to pervade the entire universe. Sri Sri, at a women's conference that we have in India every couple of years, once said that a woman represents courage with compassion, abundance with values, valor with love, and wisdom with vision. In her, he said, lies the seed of the most powerful social transformation. We're not just one thing as human beings. And I've been talking about the feminine energy because, the book. But all of us have these qualities because we have both. That strength with love, fierceness and compassion. Yes? Now, how do we bring a balance between the two? One way is to stop seeing things as a dichotomy, that it's only one, it's only the other. Because that's not how the experience of our life, is it? What if we start seeing things as these opposite values are not really opposite in nature, but are in fact complementary? Shall we play a game? Okay. So clap when I clap. And only when I clap. All right, ready? Ha. Come on. It's just a game. There's no points. Okay. Now, at some point, did you mess up? Yes. But you're still smiling. How is that possible? Because life is not a zero-sum game of winning and losing. Sometimes you win, and sometimes you make somebody else win. Life is not just opposites. These opposites, which appear to be opposing, are actually complementary. In Georgia, we've had so many years of drought. When it rains, we consider it a blessing. I was standing outside of Georgia Tech. We were teaching an Art of Living course, and the weather was overcast and slightly drizzling, just the kind of weather that nicely frizzes up your hair. And I was standing with two friends, and one of them remarked, "What beautiful weather." And I agreed. And my other friend said, "What is it? Every time it's drizzly, Indians say that the weather is so pleasant when it's overcast." My friend replied, "When it's 112 degrees outside, overcast weather is considered really great." Of course, if you lived in London, when the sun would peek out, that's what we would call great, amazing weather, right? So, these values appear to be opposing, but they're actually complementary. Take any movie that you've seen. What makes a hero a hero? The villain, right? I mean, just think about it for a moment. Harry Potter, right? Like if there was no Voldemort, he'd just be living underneath the closet his entire life and not feeling anything about it. And what makes a villain a villain? They complement each other. Just like that in life too, the challenges that we've gone through have made us stronger, haven't they? Made us more resilient, made us powerful and unbreakable. I was driving through Lake Tahoe, and the forest fires had ravaged the mountain, and it looked so different from the year before. So I commented on that to my friend who was driving the car, and she said that the bush, the growth that comes out after a forest fire, is much more resilient. Isn't that the same with our life? If you have a small child, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and you say, "Okay, in this hand, I'll give you eternal peace of mind. Or in this hand, you can have a Kit Kat." The kid will obviously choose. Some of us might. It has no value for peace of mind because it has not experienced lasting disturbance. And we have, therefore we want it. Have you noticed how the mind craves for those experiences which are pleasant? And has an aversion to those experiences which are unpleasant? And what that does, it sets up the cycle of craving and aversion in the mind. And it sets up a struggle in the mind. I want this, I don't want that. I want this, I don't want that. And then our life moves like a roller coaster. But when we can realize that these opposite values are actually complementary, the feminine, the masculine, day, night, sunshine, rain, all of these opposite values, compassion and strength, that they actually all complement each other, then such a centeredness can come over us. Then we don't get shaken. We become equanimous and able to go through the ups and downs of life without losing our smile. Wouldn't we all like that?
Yes. Yes.
Now, how can we do that? One is this knowledge itself. The other is the knowledge of meditation. Because let's face it, when our eyes are open, so many thoughts come to us. Did you know that the average man has about 150 to 200,000 thoughts a day? The average woman, 200,000 to 250,000 thoughts a day. And it's like it's a constant roller coaster, right? Pleasant, unpleasant, pleasant, unpleasant, and then our moods go along with that. So how can we center ourselves? Meditation is the key. Now, one of the beautiful things that Judith Anodea speaks about is a hero's journey. And she talks about it in terms of the hero's journey now needs to be about fighting corruption, battling environmental tendencies and destruction and all of that. I'd like to suggest that the hero's journey begins internally. The hero Shero journey. That the first point is within. After we gain self-mastery, then the mastery of possibilities opens. And this is not new. I met Congressman John Lewis, who was one of the big six of the civil rights movement a few years ago. When he found out what our foundation is doing, the Art of Living Foundation, he immediately began talking to me about how they started the movement. He said, before we did anything, before we marched, before we sat at a counter, before we did anything, we read every piece of writing of Mahatma Gandhi. We immersed ourselves in nonviolence and in love. And then we started moving. And you could see that strength when we watch video footage of what happened. I mean, he has a scar that reminds him of that every day. This is not new. It goes even back further. The ancient sages of India began with self-mastery, meditation, yoga, breathing practices. And then they took on the world, social transformation, reformation. But that was their core, that was the basis. Mahatma Gandhi himself, every evening at 7 p.m., no matter where he was, no matter what he was doing, no matter what was going on outside, he would stop at 7 p.m. and hold what was called satsang, which was meditation, knowledge, self-reflection. And that powered his strength. So how can we look inward? What can we do? Let's turn to a partner right now. You know, the first question of looking inward is, who am I? Every spiritual journey begins with this question, does it not? Who am I? So, decide who's A and who's B. B will go. B will ask the question, who am I? I mean, who are you? Because you're asking your partner. And A, just say the first word that comes to your mind. And B, the only thing coming out of your mouth is, who are you? And A, whatever just keeps coming, just keep responding. Okay? So there's no conversation. There's only just question and answer. Question, answer. Until I ask you to stop. So the instructions are that B will say, or ask the question, who are you? And A, just say the first thing that comes to your mind. B, keep repeating that question, prompting A. A, keep responding with whatever just comes up. Okay? All right, let's begin. Okay, stop. Let's reverse. Switch. A will ask the question, B will respond. Who are you? And let's give each other a big hand. It's a beautiful question, isn't it? Who am I? What is my purpose here? What do I plan to do with the rest of my life? What difference do I want to make in the world? How am I contributing to making this a divine society? Such powerful questions. Now, when you were sharing who am I, your answers, did you feel like, okay, that's it, I'm complete? No, right? And we could have kept going. We could have kept going, kept going. In social media, you're given a certain number of characters to introduce yourself and give your bio. But in reality, the entire Oxford English Dictionary could not encompass who you are. Words itself are incomplete, which is why we have experiences such as giving flowers to someone to symbolize the delicate feelings you have, or to give chocolates, or to give anything. They're symbols of our love, because just the words "I love you" don't cut it. If your love can be encompassed in those 3 words, you haven't loved deep enough. So, who am I? It's worth asking yourself that question again and again. I remember in 2000, I was attending a silence retreat with Sri Ravi Shankar, and he asked us to just meditate on those words. And all of the things that I'm not first came to the surface. And it was beautiful to have gone through that experience. You know, I'm not just the body, I'm not my mind, I'm not this, I'm not that. And then at some point, I transcended words themselves and went into meditation. Because only in states of meditation can you even get a glimpse of who you are. Because who we are is beyond words. It's an experience of something so divine that resides inside. So, shall we just go inside now? Let's close our eyes. Let's take a deep breath in. Another breath in. Once more, let's breathe in and let go. Every breath that we take in brings energy. Every breath out brings relief, relaxation. Allow your mind to go to the past. Recalling experiences that you had this week. This month. This year. the years gone by, recall the different things, all the things that have happened to you in this life. The happy memories have been gifts to us. Our challenging experiences have been even greater gifts to us. Bringing about strength, dynamic skill, inner strength, power, and resilience. Let our mind go to the future, and our imagination of what can be. Worries or victories, whatever happens will happen. And we know that whatever happens is for our ultimate good. Let us bring our mind back to the present. Let's become aware of the region of our heart. And a tiny point in the center of the chest. We have seen time and time again that through the good times or the bad, grace has carried us through. Somehow we've always been protected. We've always been taken care of. And in the future, we will always be protected. And we will continue to be taken care of. Feel the strength of universal love, divine love and protection inside of you and around you. Let's take a deep breath in and let go. Another breath in And let go. And with the confident smile of your own inner strength, with the grand smile, let's slowly open our eyes. Life is this beautiful wave of ups and downs, and it's what makes life interesting. If we were to watch a movie in which the characters woke up, got married, and lived happily ever after, it would be such a boring movie. And our lives are not like that. But when we realize the inner strength that we have, when we bring all these factors together and see how they complement each other and how they create wholeness within us and in this universe, then we can go through anything that's happening with so much grace, with dignity, with a smile that never leaves your face. And that is my wish for you. May the smile that you have right now carry you through this week and this life. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Alt, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.